Welcome to the International Society for Performance Improvement. Today's conversation will be with Michelle Holliday, brand strategist of Cambion, and also the author of The Age of Thrivability, Vital Perspectives and Practices for a Better World. Ms. Holliday will be a Master Series speaker at the upcoming 2017 International Society for Performance Improvement Conference in Montreal, Canada, April 30th through May the 2nd.
Good morning, viewers. My name is Valerie Bernard, and I'm a volunteer for the International Society for Performance Improvement, and I'm coming to you live from Dallas, Texas. Joining me today is Michelle Holliday from Cambion, and she's coming to us live from our city where our conference is going to be held, beautiful Montreal. And we were just talking here earlier this morning, and I understand that it's snowing in Montreal and it's raining in Dallas, but we're still considering this to be a warm event today. So we're glad that all of you could join us. And Michelle, we're so glad that you're here today too. Thank you so much for the gift of your time.
Thank you, Valerie. So happy to be here.
Oh, and I have enjoyed myself the past 48 hours because I've had the opportunity to study some of your work and to take a look at your new book, The Age of Thrivability, and today we'd like to talk a little bit about that. But before we jump into all the amazing work that you're doing around the world, I'd like to just give our listeners and our viewers an opportunity to hear a little bit about the amazing background that you have. So I'll just jump right in with that. Michelle is actually a brand strategist, and she has over 20 years of experience in international marketing. And her experience is aligning internal and external branding and communications for powerful, sustainable impact. And it's evidenced in the results that she's had from some of the amazing companies that she's worked for. She started out with H.G. Heinz in the former Soviet Union, and she developed and implemented a comprehensive strategy to launch product categories covering everything from pricing and positioning to packaging and promotion. And, you know, in the arena of performance improvement, we're always looking at how the work that we do impacts the bottom line results. And with the work that you did there, Michelle, when you left the office, there were 35 employees and sales of $12 million a year with product distribution throughout the Soviet Union. But viewers and listeners, it just doesn't stop there. She left there to become the brand manager for Coca-Cola brand for Russia, Moldova, and Kazakhstan. With an $11 million marketing budget, Michelle initiated and oversaw a full range of advertising campaigns. And as she entered the position with Coca-Cola, was new to the region, and the market leader, the competitor Pepsi, had a 20-year head start. When she left Coca-Cola, sales were double those of Pepsi's. Just some more amazing work, Michelle. It's just amazing what you've done. And then growing your interest in the internal side of branding left you to leave Coca-Cola to co-found a consulting firm dedicated to leveraging culture and leadership more effectively. And I just can't wait to learn more today about the engagement competency model that you've developed and how you're using that tool to guide organizations and to build frameworks that help sustain an organization's business. And then you went to Washington, D.C., and some of your clients were Merrill Lynch, the U.S. Department of Energy, and your Asia Foundation. And then somehow, life's journey took you over to Montreal, Canada in 2004, where you founded Cambion Consulting. And you've helped so many organizations there, too. And one of the ones that stuck out for me as I was reading your bio was the Montreal Nature Museum and the 650 employees there that you helped to articulate what their shared vision would be. With a bachelor degree in Russian studies and a master's degree and a concentration in international marketing, you are certified to apply the cultural transformational tools, and you've lived all over the world from U.S., Canada, Scotland, England, Russia, and France, and you speak 3 languages, French, Russian, and English. So we are so glad and honored that you're going to also be one of our Master Series speakers at our upcoming International Society for Performance Improvement Conference in Montreal, Canada. And so with that, I'd like to ask our listeners and our viewers to please join me in welcoming Michelle Holliday.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. What a journey you've had. My goodness, all over the world and all these brand names that we're so familiar with, and then the idea to start your own consulting practice, Cambion. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about that, and then I'd love to learn more also about how you came up with that company name.
All right. Well, it started, my journey the most recent leg of my journey, I guess, started after I moved away from Coca-Cola, and in my experience there, I noticed that marketing seemed to be missing something really important. You know, Coca-Cola is so famous for its effectiveness, the effectiveness of its brand strategy, and still I craved something that was a bit more relational and meaningful, and they've moved in that direction since I left. Not anything to do with me, but this is the way the world is moving, that even marketing is moving into a less transactional, less manipulative relationship with customers, and a much more conversational relationship and co-creative relationship. So that's what I was looking for, and I didn't find it in marketing, and thought maybe it doesn't exist there. Maybe it's just me who has it all wrong. And I moved into employee engagement, and again found some similar resistance to the idea of a deep and meaningful relationship with employees, and a conversational and co-creative relationship. The clients that I worked with very often said, this is the human spirit has no place in business. I would use, my colleagues and I would use terminology like the human spirit and purpose and passion, and these were not yet accepted in the business world. They would say to us, try the nonprofits, they're interested in that kind of thing, and the nonprofits were trying to be more business-like, so they weren't interested either. And I thought, how is it that these things don't make sense within the framework and the model we currently have for business and even for the nonprofit world? And so one of my opportunities, you know, that along my journey was a year and a half in Paris. My husband got transferred there, and I wasn't allowed to work legally. So that was heavenly in itself, to be forced to live in Paris and and not allowed to work, taken care of. But I thought, you know, I want to figure this out. I want to take this time to understand, where did we get the story that we have that seems to me to be very mechanistic? You know, we have a story that tells us that companies are separate from people, the people who work there, separate from customers, separate from nature. They exist for their own interests, and those interests are really only transactional, only about productivity, profitability, and I thought there has to be something more. There has to be life. Also, we're alive, and so I needed to understand, how does life work? What does it mean for something to be alive, and even more, what does it mean for it to thrive? So this was 2001, 2002, when I was in Paris, and just following my curiosity and studying biology most of all, to find out what are the core conditions that have to be in place, or the characteristics that have to be present if life is to thrive, and is there any relationship between those and the characteristics and conditions that have to be there if an organization is to thrive. So I found they're the same exact characteristics, and it was a really exciting discovery, like life on Earth, you know, or life on some other planet. Here it is, and scientific evidence. And I found it really important to offer a bridge from that machine story and our focus on just the transactional to a larger story. Those things are not wrong. They're just not the whole story. So I went further into the research there in Paris, and built a consulting framework, the engagement competency model, around those. These are the practices and the conditions we have to create on an ongoing basis if life is to thrive within our organizations at every level, for the individual employees, for the organization as a living ecosystem, for customers, for community, for the biosphere. So it's a limited and digestible set of conditions that we have to keep working on, keep cultivating like gardeners in our organizations. So you asked, where did the company name come from? You were curious about that. And along the way in my studies, and then as I started to work with organizations, the metaphor of a tree came up as a useful one that I'm just trying to decide how much detail to go into, but
you want all the detail. Please give us the detail.
You want all the detail. All right. So in a living system, one of the characteristics is that there are parts. There are individual parts like the cells in our bodies, and we want them to be diverse, you know, diverse contributions and expressions, and we know that from biodiversity, right? So in the tree metaphor, I imagine that the roots of the tree represent the people and the parts. in an organization, that's the different people and all of our passions that we bring. The second characteristic is that those parts come together in a new whole, and so your cells come together and make you, and that's different. It's a different level of life. You are a collection of cells, and you're also more than that, and you have new capabilities at the level of all of you, the whole of you, and that's the magic that we're after in living systems and living organizations. That it's not even just two heads are better than one. It's that two people create something that neither of them could do together, and new capabilities, new insights. We have this experience when it's a fantastic team. It's so elevating, so exponential in its creation of new capability and possibility. So what brings people together in wholeness within an organization is purpose, shared purpose. And so in the metaphor of the tree, this is represented by the branches and the fruit, the offering that we make out into the world. And in exchange, we get the light and life from the sun that comes into the leaves and back down into the rest of the tree. And in the roots, we know that we want that diverse root base so that we have access to different sources of nutrition, right? And that's where life comes in through the root base. So life is coming in from employees, from customers, in the form of money and resources and information and relationship. So then there's the trunk. The third characteristic is that there's relationship, there's exchange and flow and pattern that's consistent but flexible. So what's interesting, and here's where I get to the cambium part, most of the trunk of a tree is dead. It's non-living. And this is why we see all the rings. This is, as it grows, the core of it is dead. But there's a thin layer of living tissue just under the bark that's called the cambium. And this is where life flows through, from the roots up to the branches and leaves and fruit and back down again to the roots. So normally, when we are thinking of organizations in the mechanistic model, we think that space of infrastructure is the whole organization, that our processes and our buildings and our cash registers, all the non-living things, that is the organization, and employees and customers are external to it. But this metaphor helps us see that it's the whole system is the organization. We can't really separate them, and that the infrastructure is in fact in service of. It's the connective and supportive infrastructure that serves life ultimately. And so as important as it is, we need that trunk of infrastructure to raise the leaves and the fruit up and out into the world, but we have to keep it in its proper place as well, so that we don't create a bureaucracy. When we're in service of infrastructure, it's a lifeless bureaucracy by design. So it's an invitation to keep in perspective the role of infrastructure. It's fundamentally important, but its purpose is really to serve the flow of life within the living organization.
So the part that says cambium, then, help me understand, without the science background and the trees, I understand the analogy. Help me understand that specific part.
Okay, so that's where cambium is where life flows through the trunk of a tree. It brings resources and life from the leaves to the roots and from the roots to the leaves. So that's the space of flow, and that's a useful metaphor for our organizations and how we have to design them to support that flow of life.
I tell you what, you sure had the epiphany back in Paris when you had this idea to learn and to dig in and to go into some biology and to be able to take all of these moving parts that we know happen inside of relationships and systems and inside the organization, and to put it into such a simplistic way for understanding. So it's just such a gift that you have, and I know that the clients that you work with are getting this gift as well. And our viewers can learn more about your organization at www.cambium.com. Is that right?
Cambiumconsulting.com, or the website of my book, www.ageofthrivability.com.
Perfect. So speaking of that book, Age of Thrivability, and the tagline for that, Vital Perspectives and Practices for a Better World. And like I told you in an earlier conversation we had, that ISPI's strategy is the brand tagline is Being Better Matters. And the title of your book just fits so beautifully into that. But tell us about your book. Tell us from start to finish, kind of where did you get your inspiration? I know some of that just from listening to you already, but and then how did it come about, and what's it evolved into now, and what are some of your goals?
Great, thanks for asking. So a large part of the book is dedicated to exploring those patterns, the conditions, fertile conditions that we have to cultivate, sharing stories of organizations that have embraced that perspective of organizations. And it's not only about recognizing those conditions and working with them, it's about shifting how we see ourselves then. And I mentioned this briefly earlier, that we shift from seeing ourselves as managers, controllers, engineers, to seeing ourselves almost as gardeners. And there's a word I love, stewards. In stewardship, we care for something even though we don't have full control over it. We may not even own it, but and it's somehow precious in its mystery and being beyond our control, and therefore we have a certain level of reverence for it, almost as a parent does for their child. You don't own your child, you don't control them, but you care and create the conditions for them to thrive as much as they can too. So there's a certain perspective. The subtitle is Perspectives and Practices. So the starting point is that shift in how we see our role and our relationships within the organization, and then moving into practices of conversation, of prototyping, of being in shared learning and sensing of what's needed on an ongoing basis. And maybe I should explain the word thrivability is really about the ongoing intention and practice to create the conditions for life to thrive. So thrivability is not a destination or a thing on your to-do list that you check off and then you're done and you move on. It's a constantly shifting practice. You're constantly changing, the organization is constantly evolving and growing, the circumstances shift, and so it's an ongoing practice of first sensing what's needed here in this moment, what has changed and why, what can we learn from it, and then responding with the wisest, most compassionate, most effective response you can. So that intention and continuous practice to create the conditions for life to thrive at every level, as I said before, for individuals, for the organization, for customer community, and biosphere.
Well, I was really excited to learn more about this from you today. I was talking with Sonia DeMallo, who's one of our amazing ISPI members and who's also one of our award winners this year for her book as well, Apple in the Orchard. And she's a part of the Montreal ISPI chapter. And I was talking to her the other day, and we were just having a general conversation about some things that I was working on. And I just said, my clients are going crazy. I'm going crazy. The world is so fast. It's just changing so fast. I logged in to use the software that I just had learned 2 weeks ago, and Microsoft decided to change it, and I was up all night. And so I was sharing with her some of the things about this. And the thing that came out, the very next thing Sonia said to me was, have you read Michelle's book all the way through? and so I said, I'm not all the way through yet. She goes, keep reading. So I think that, what you're sharing and what you're doing in your mission in life and your passion and your purpose is, whether you're a performance improvement professional or you're a parent that's going through all of these drastic changes, how do we thrive, and how do we build this around us, and the tree analogy and all of that. And so this is, I think, my understanding of the message that you're trying to send out to the world.
It's true. The description for my master's series talk at the Montreal conference starts out with something about the complexity and change, and those are fundamentally living concepts, living systems concepts. When everything is a machine or based on machinery, we don't find unexpected change. We don't find complexity. We can always break things down and just fix them. So the fact that we're facing complexity and change is forcing us into new ways of thinking, new language, and new approaches. So there is a way through. There's an elegant and gentle, I guess, way through to beyond the fear and the panic and stress of complexity.
Well, I definitely think our conference theme this year is Shaping the Future of Performance Improvement. And from what I've learned about you, you were way ahead of your time even 20 years ago with the way that you were looking at, passion and purpose, and that not really being widely accepted at the time. And I'm confident that you're probably already 10, 15 years down the road and even working on projects that are going to make a difference in things that we might not have thought of ourselves. Is there anything that you have that you're working on that for the future that you might want to share, or is it private right now? Or
well, I've just published the book, so I think this is a big focus for me. How do I invite people in to that exploration and make it easy for them, make it really inviting, engaging through events like this. So I don't think there's much beyond that. It's a lifetime work as it is. So I think this is my focus at the moment.
With the book and with speaking, and then also doing your consulting, and in addition to all of that, your organization is still helping other organizations develop their brand strategy. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and because I had these two earlier phases in my career with brand strategy and then employee engagement, and because I see organizations as living systems, whole living systems in which it doesn't make sense to separate brand strategy from employee engagement fully. So I'm always bringing both of those. They're never separate. So yes, I'm continuing to work with clients, and that's a great source of learning and validation and fun. It's just,
yes, and what a gift for your clients too. I worked in advertising myself before I launched my own company 15 years ago, and so when you're working with a consultant that understands how to develop that brand along the way and create that mission and vision in conjunction with the changes that you might be facing, or the need for changes or particular interventions, the understanding the entire system is what I can definitely see as a gift that you bring to your clients, and not having a consultant for this piece and a consultant for this piece and trying to get that to all kind of mesh together sometimes can be somewhat challenging. So I just encourage people to really check out your company and at Cambion, and what you're doing also as a keynote speaker, and I see some of this intertwined with motivational as well. And so whether it's systems or branding or motivation, Michelle, your work is just truly amazing. So is there anything else that you can think of that you would like our participants, those that are already coming to the conference, and then those that also might be considering the ISPI conference for their professional development, is there anything you'd like them to know about the presentation that you're doing, or who the audience might be and why they should attend?
Great. Yeah, I would like to say I will share the smallest amount of the science just about what I did now. I'll share lots of stories, and they're fantastic, fascinating, inspiring stories of some really pioneering organizations here in Montreal, and we'll have some conversation as well. It won't be boring, so it won't be just me talking, but we'll get to know what the participants' perspectives are as well. So I really hope people will come along.
Well, I'm excited to come. It's Michelle, it's my first time in Montreal, and I understand also that it's going to be the 375th anniversary in Montreal. So what's your favorite place to go eat? If somebody wanted to say, I'm coming to Montreal and I'm going to go out on the town tonight, what would be a place that you would say, you've got to check this out? Or are there so many?
I have a funny recommendation. This is just the first thing that comes to mind, but the national Quebec dish is poutine. Have you heard of poutine?
No, I haven't.
No. Okay, so it's French fries covered in gravy, actually covered in cheese curds, and then covered in gravy, and the hot gravy melts the cheese curds. So it's greasy and heavy, but it's just that there's one place that has maybe 30 varieties that are gourmet versions of this, and the basic versions as well. And so that's and it's open 24 hours, and so it's called La Banquise.
We'll definitely have to check this out, especially if we're finishing up the conference late at night and every place is closed. We know we can get this 24/7. So thank you for that recommendation. And what's someplace else that you think our listeners and viewers should visit while they're in beautiful Montreal?
Well, this is the largest French-speaking city in the world outside of Paris. So you have to experience old Montreal or any part of Montreal. And it's not just the language, it's that this is a North American city and it feels North American, but it's European as well. So I think it's not a coincidence that I've been able to do the work that I've done here because we have this intersection of two cultures, and it's a weaving together in really beautiful ways. So just immerse yourself in this fantastic city. There are parks everywhere. There's the river, the St. Lawrence River. It has so much to offer. So,
well, thank you for this as well. I would just love to ask you to speak some French for us, or even some Russian, or
okay.
So maybe you could say like welcome to Montreal, or
bienvenue à Montréal. Et добро пожаловать à Montréal.
Well, thank you so much. Also, our Master of Ceremonies this year is Harold Stolovich, and he is also from Montreal. So we've got a pretty amazing lineup of people, and we're so thankful that you're one of those, Michelle, and we definitely look forward to seeing you in Montreal.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Valerie. See you then.
Yeah, see you then.
To learn more about the International Society for Performance Improvement and the upcoming 2017 International Society for Performance Improvement Conference, Shaping the Future of Performance Improvement, visit www.ispi.org/conference. We hope to see you in Montreal.